Welcome, Alia. Alia is coming to us to tell us about the Fulbright student program, Columbia University. You have 10 minutes.
Hi everyone, my name is Alia Shalaby. I'm a Fulbright teacher. I'm not working as a teacher anymore, but I want you to know this because this is directly related to my graduation project. So I worked as an elementary science teacher in an international school in Cairo for 4 years, and then I traveled to study at Columbia University. So I went to Columbia to study curriculum and teaching, and I was so interested in curriculum design. That was my main focus of study. But I kind of had a great degree of flexibility in my program, so I didn't have a lot of required courses, and I had the choice to tailor my program according to my own interests. So I want to talk about the three concepts or the three ideas that interested me the most, which were basically literacy teaching, I mean by literacy reading and writing, and literacy and learning in content areas. And content areas are briefly like science, math, social studies, and so on. And the idea that fascinated me the most was culturally relevant pedagogy. And for those who are not familiar with the field of education, pedagogy means the practice of teaching in classroom. And the culturally relevant pedagogy is like making the experience or what you teach, the material that you teach to your students more relevant to their backgrounds and culture, opposite to what happens in many international schools here. Like we just import curriculum from America or the US and the UK without considering the students' cultures and backgrounds, or like making adaptations for those, for the contents that we are working with. As I continued to study, I started making connections between my past experience as a teacher in an international school and my studies at Columbia. Started thinking about the problem of teaching literacy and science to what we call ELLs. And ELLs are English language learners, or students who do not speak English as their native language. And you might ask, what's the problem with teaching literacy and science to ELLs? The main problem is in international schools is that students are forced to speak in English only. Students and teachers are not allowed to use Arabic, which is their native language. They are not allowed to use it even in classroom discussions, and sometimes even out of the class. They are prohibited from doing this, which is kind of, it's a bit ridiculous, right? Because sometimes students are able to understand science concepts, but they are not able to communicate their understandings well in their non-native language, which is English. And so this results in a problem of labeling those students who might be really good at science, but they are labeled as low achievers and who need remedial classes just because they cannot communicate in English, you know. Another thing, or another label that like some people look down to people, other people who do not speak English fluently, and we all know those social issues that come with speaking English, like if you pronounce the PEB and the BP, and so you're labeled as you're from a low social class if you don't speak English fluently, right? So I found this really a real problem and started to integrate all what I've studied to my past experience and decided to design a curriculum that is a culturally responsive curriculum. And I mean by culture, language. Culture is represented in my curriculum in the language. So it's a culturally responsive science and literacy curriculum. It's kind of an integrated curriculum between science, and it has a literacy component, I mean reading and writing in English. And I'm going to elaborate more about the theoretical frameworks that I built my curriculum on. So my project addresses the problem of language, identity, and education in international schools in Egypt through a curriculum which aims at engaging Egyptian students in a culturally relevant science learning experience that honors their native language and their culture and their background, but at the same time it works on developing their literacy skills in English. It does not ignore the development of their literacy skills in English, because English is their gate to everything in the world. We have to be realistic about that. So my main problem is, how can we help English language learners engage in a culturally relevant science learning experience without being labeled as low achievers or low social class, and at the same time, how do we honor their native language skills without ignoring their development of the literacy skills in English. So I started to review the literature that is relevant to this problem and kind of had two main support strategies or two main concepts that I built my framework or my curriculum on. The first one that I want to elaborate more on is the bilingual and bicultural aspect in my curriculum, and particularly the code switching. Code switching, simply it's a behavior for any bilingual person in the world. It's a very natural behavior. If you can speak two languages fluently, so you switch between the two languages as you are talking. You use English fillers in the middle of Arabic sentences and the opposite happens. So this curriculum acknowledges the code switching behavior as a normal thing that happens naturally, and it does not force the student to use only one language inside the classroom. The other thing, which I think we don't have time to elaborate on, is the multimodalities, but it's briefly like using different modes other than reading and writing to let students communicate their learning, like drawing, role play, singing, and things like that. So we implemented the curriculum. That was a bit of a hassle because we implemented it remotely with a group of my former students. I was in New York City and they implemented it here and the videotaped it and sent me the videos so I can write my analysis, and here are some pictures for the classroom activities, the students working in pairs and groups. What we found was very interesting. First, that students were more able to articulate or demonstrate their understanding in both languages, Arabic and English. What was more interesting is that students at first, in the first session, they were very reluctant to use Arabic when they were told bluntly by the teacher that you are allowed to use Arabic. And I think my analysis about that is that, first of all, they were still not familiar with the teacher and the context, and so they were trying to prove that they can use the academic language, which is English, so they were reluctant to using Arabic when they were told that. And also, I think, or my conclusion is that they were afraid of those labels, of being labeled as low achievers if they are not comfortable using English. But as we continued to implement other sessions, we decided not to tell them, to leave it like a natural thing. So the code switching behavior started to increase during small group talk and classroom discussions. When they became more comfortable, they started using more of mix of the two languages. And so try to think about future steps or what's next, what can we build on that. As I was proposing the curriculum to a number of international schools, the idea of the Arabic component in the curriculum, it was written in English, but the idea of allowing the use of Arabic in classroom was not so welcomed by administrations. So I think we need to work on challenging this dominance of the Western ways of knowing by spreading the idea in informal institutions at first. I think we can start spreading it in after-school learning centers or cultural centers, public libraries, whatever informal educational institutions. Till it becomes normal, it becomes like a culture that it's acceptable, it's okay to do that. Especially that using two languages enhances learning, it's not a bad thing. And I think the way to this is finding a team of passionate educators who are passionate about the same idea, talking to parents, community members who are interested in the same thing, and trying to build on that. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this insightful presentation. We have 5 minutes for questions.
Just a simple question. What was the sample size again?
Yes.
What again? Can you repeat the question? So like the sample size.
There were 9 to 10 students, but actually this was not an action research, it was a curriculum project. So in my program I had the choice to either do an action research, which I found irrelevant if I do it in the US context, so I chose to do a curriculum project, so it was more of an analysis and reflection, it was not like an accurate sample. Okay.
Dr. Magdi?
Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation.
Thank you very much. This was very interesting. I have a question about your methodology. Does this relate in any way or another to CLIL? Does your methodology relate to CLIL, content and language integrated learning? CLIL.
Methodology relate to?
CLIL. Are you familiar with CLIL? Because in CLIL you have content and language integrated together, and culture has a very high impact in the project. No. I wonder in what stage are you now in the experiment?
Actually, it's done, but I'm not familiar with the twin that you mentioned. I use the silent model, which is like incorporating literacy and language goals in every session or in every lesson, integrated with the content. So I think it's kind of
you might find this interesting to read about because it's really, yeah, I think it's very relevant to what you're doing and might add insight to you. But congratulations and
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for the good presentation. Just a question. You discussed you mentioned code switching midst this presentation, so I just missed. I was confused. What was the problem with switching? Did you try to overcome this problem with switching in the teaching environment, international school? What was the relationship between the code switching that you worked on and the curriculum project that you mentioned?
Well, I mentioned the code switching as a natural behavior, not a problem. So my curriculum was acknowledging this behavior, which is switching between Arabic and English. So it was like it allows students to switch between Arabic and English during classroom discussions as long as they are learning the scientific terms correctly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.